All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Crew Show with a little 49er update. Niners making a roster move, or one of their players is moving on. We'll tell you who that is coming up next. But first, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Get the brisket chili, and tell them that Krug sent you. Now, we're also brought to you by Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles, 205 Cypress Avenue in Pacific Grove, California. Call Anthony Catania. He's at 831-521-5264. All right, let's talk a little 49ers here as today Ross Dwelley has officially moved on. He is no longer a 49er. He gets a one-year deal to sign on with the Atlanta Falcons. And let's talk a little bit about Dwelley in the tight end position. Dwelley's an interesting guy. He's now 29. And now that he signed with the Falcons, he reunites with Charlie Warner. So both of the Niner backup tight ends to George Kittle moved on, and both moved on to the Falcons. Warner signed there earlier this offseason in free agency. Warner's the blocker. Dwelley's the receiver. Warner got a 3-year deal to go there. Dwelley, I believe, gets a 1-year deal to go to Atlanta. But, Ross Dwelley's an interesting guy. 6'5", 235 pounds. He's now 29. Adam Schefter, by the way, reported this transaction that Dwelley's now a Falcon. And, Dwelley started 17 games over 6 seasons with the Niners. He was an undrafted college free agent in the 2018 draft out of the University of San Diego. He played for the Toreros, which is a Jesuit school. It's not a powerhouse program. It's an FCS school. This guy was an awesome receiving tight end at the University of San Diego. And that's kind of what he's been with the Niners. He's been on their hands team. He's been that when they want that extra receiver flexed out, they use him. When Juice went down, they utilized him at fullback. He's a versatile, smallish tight end who struggles as a blocker, but he's got great movement skills and great hands, and will catch it in a crowd and hold on. Now, last year he played 12 games with the Niners, which if you told me that he played 12 games, I would have said no way. I would have said maybe a third of that, maybe 4 games. But he played 12 games. But he only had 1 reception and only 12 yards receiving, and then he landed on season-ending IR on January 6th with a high ankle sprain. So what he is, though, is a dependable bench guy. And in 6 years with the Niners, he had 44 receptions, 518 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns. He played in 84 games. He actually made 17 starts in his career. So you look at that tight end spot. Warner's in Atlanta. Dwelley's in Atlanta. So you have Kittle and you have Braden Willis, who's a second-year player who's kind of built more like a fullback. And then you have Cam Latu, the 3rd-round draft choice out of Alabama a year ago. And you have Jake Tungs, who's a college free agent, street free agent. He played his college ball at Cal. And then you have Mason Pline, who just attended the recent rookie minicamp from Furman, the ex-basketball player from Ferris State, who's got, very smart, huge hands, super athletic. To me, Pline replaces Dwelley, and I think Pline's going to make the roster. He's a bigger target than Dwelley. He's not as fast, I don't believe, as Dwelley, but he's got better receiving skills. He's a bigger bodied guy. I think in time, he's got potential to offer you more as a run blocker on the line of scrimmage than Dwelley can. But he's also really, really, really smart. I mean, one of the things that the Niners, I'm sure, loved about Dwelley is he went to the University of San Diego. He went to a Jesuit school. He was a really bright guy. Well, guess what? Mason Pline, who played at Furman and before that Ferris State, was a mechanical engineering major and is very, very bright. And then you got Braden Willis, who, will lay out for a catch. He's like a receiver. He's like a running back. He's shorter than your ideal tight end. He's not nearly the inline blocker, so he's got to be a receiver. So if you look at the Niners right now, you got Kittle, who's a tremendous two-way player, right? He's a dominating inline blocker. as good a blocking tight end as there is probably in the league. Really tenacious, but he's also a receiver. So that what makes him an all-world player. Then you have Braden Willis, who I don't think is going to be much of a blocker other than trying hard, but he will lay out like a wide receiver for the ball. So he's got wide receiver traits. Then you got Pline, who's got really, really, good size. He's a huge target. He's not a strong inline blocker, but he also is a mechanical engineering major. He's very smart with 10.5-inch hands. And so he potentially can take Dwelley's role. And then you have Jake Tongues, who I can think of as just a practice squad guy who's not really going to advance beyond the practice squad. And then you got Cameron Latou, and Latou might be one of the most interesting guys to watch for this summer in that he was a third-round draft choice last year. A lot of people felt like that was a reach, but the Niners really liked him and loved his athletic profile. Now, he started at Alabama as a linebacker and transitioned to tight end after a couple years there. And so maybe he's a little less refined than your typical tight end. He dropped a ton of balls this summer in training camp. And once he, after about half those drops, it was pretty clear he wasn't going to make the team. They redshirted him. I think they're going to gave him the full year to just learn the system, learn the plays, commit everything to memory, understand what we're trying to do, really digest the playbook, and then come back in year 2 and make more of an impact. So here we are right now. It's early May. There's still talk that the Niners may add a veteran tight end. Mercedes Lewis is out there. He's a proven inline blocker, but he's in his late 30s. There's Robert Tonyan, who's played for the Bears and the Packers, and he is a buddy of George Kittle's. So maybe that's the direction they go. I could definitely see them adding one more veteran tight end before camp begins. But now there was a lot of speculation that they would go back to Dwelley. But I think really what this tells me is that because Dwelley was going to be the receiver, they're not going to have Kittle and 2 receiving tight ends. They're going to have Kittle and then 1 blocking tight end and 1 receiving tight end. So figure Latou and Willis can be either blockers or receivers. Mason Pline is much more of a receiver than a blocker. Dwelley was much more of a receiver than a blocker. I was impressed by Pline and what he got accomplished at the minicamp. I think he looks strong in the upper body. He clearly has done some work in the weight room. He's got good quickness. He's got good hands. He's a good route runner. He'll go up high to catch the ball in a crowd. I think because Pline looked good, if Pline had fallen on his face, maybe they re-signed Dwelley. But because Pline looked so good, I think that Pline's going to be there, and then it's just a matter of who gets that third spot. And right now, I'd have to say Cam Latou, as a third-round draft choice, probably has the lead in the clubhouse over Jake Tongues and over Braden Willis. But you never know. And there could be another addition to the tight end room. But, the one thing that you can see when you're watching Ross Dwelley is that he is a phenomenal receiver. And when you watch Pline, you see those same big-time receiving skills. So they've already, in a way, replaced Ross Dwelley with Mason Pline. Now the question is, are they going to replace Charlie Warner with an inline blocker of note? And if so, do any of the guys that they've looked at fit the bill? I know Mercedes Lewis can block. I know Robert Tonyan can block, but they're not in camp right now, and they have made no indication that they're going to add a veteran tight end. Now, they probably should, because they've utilized this position. They've gone 4 deep at tight end, I believe, the last 3 or 4 years under Shanahan. So he likes to utilize the tight end, and I'm sure that he's going to be looking for an extra blocker at times. And how good of a job can Pline do? How good of a job can Latou do? That these are questions that are kind of unknowns at this point. We don't know what kind of inline blockers the Niners have at tight end behind George Kittle. But it is interesting that they allowed Dwelley to move on, and the fact that he waited this long probably means that he was open to coming back, and they just didn't have any roster spots for him. So, George Kittle's your number 1 tight end. And I would guess that Cam Latu gets off the deck and plays much, much better in year 2 than he played in year 1. Why? Because I felt like in year 1, he really was just thinking a lot, and he wasn't really just letting his natural ability flow. He was thinking a lot. You can't play this game um, if you're thinking, and then if you're bogged down in your thoughts. So I think Latu bounces back with a huge camp and becomes tight end 2, and then I think Pline shows the receiving skills that he showed in minicamp and in college at Furman, and takes that spot that Dwelley relinquished. So if you ask me to make a prediction, I'll say it's Kittle, Latu, and Pline. But there's always a chance that the Niners pick up another tight end and try to have a little bit more veteran status on that tight end position. But I definitely think that the fact that Dwelley moved on after the pro day shows that what I saw out there was legit, which is that, you know what? Mason Pline's a legitimate receiving tight end, and he can man that role that Dwelley manned for the 49ers over the past 6 seasons. He can man that role right now and save them some money on the cap. So I think that's what I take away from the Dwelley signing, is that I think Dwelley, all things being equal, wanted to come back. And I think the Niners maybe had some interest in bringing him back. But once Pline played really well as an undrafted guy in minicamp, they probably said to themselves, you know what? Let's tell Ross through his agent, if he wants to sign elsewhere, he ought to do it, because he's going to have a hard time unseating Mason Pline this summer in Santa Clara in Niner camp. And why not, why have him come back if he's just going to wind up losing his job and be, on the street in July? So that's my read on it. But if you're just tuning in, Adam Schefter reporting Ross Dwelley signs a 1-year deal to go to the Atlanta Falcons and rejoin Charlie Warner there with the Falcons. All right, that does it for the video. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the video. Thanks to Sharp Corners, Sports Cards and Collectibles for sponsoring us as well. They're at 821-521-5264. And also thanks to all of you guys for supporting The Krug Show on YouTube.